can you share your 2024 numbers?
Yeah, so I did 386, 150 in GCI. And so that was 35 closings, just under 12 million in volume.
What did you do to start generating leads and appointments and listings from day one?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did a little bit more unique, what we did was
X amount of leads are coming in. How many are you able to get in touch with? And of those people you're able to get in touch with, what does your appointment set ratio look like?
I set 93 appointments last year that were for listings.
Talk to us about the importance of creating a compelling presentation, and talk to us about your approach to your listing appointment and what you're doing to actually win the client.
Yeah, so this is honestly where I have to give you and your program a ton of credit, because prior to, I had no idea what I was doing. But honestly, I think the biggest key that I've found success with.
All right, real quick, before you start watching this interview, if you're a real estate agent and you're watching this video and you're not earning at least $10,000 a month every single month consistently, I'm going to put a link in the description for us to jump on a quick Zoom. We'll show you exactly how you can start earning a minimum of $100,000 a year, step by step, for free. So let's start off with how long have you been in the business? What market are you in?
Yeah, so I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I officially got licensed in April of 23, but went full-time February of 24.
Got it. Okay, so it's just about to be 1 full year in the business. And you've got a very unique story in that before you were in sales full time in the dental medical supply field, and you were making somewhere around what, $300,000 per year. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so to leave that, to replace that income, huge leap of faith. And we're going to talk all about that, because typically it's not like that. Typically people leave their full-time job making a lot less than they could in real estate, or that they do in real estate. And so this was a huge risk for you. So I guess if I'm watching this, I'm like, well, why would you leave something that seems to be, so lucrative?
Yeah. So for me, really it came down to, I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. And I think throughout working in corporate America for a while, you learn that you think you're in control, even though you're a boss. I mean, I was a regional director. Doesn't mean you're actually fully in control, because if corporate makes a decision that affects you, it affects you. And so really it was about controlling my own destiny. And so when I got my license in April of 23, I had definitely a good mentor, and I worked with him in the dental business as well. And we did it part-time for the year and made a little over 6 figures part-time from April through December. And I'm like, all right, if I can do this part-time, just making cold calls on lunch breaks, I think I can do this if I have all my time. And so just decided to make the jump in February. Definitely was scary. Definitely a lot of convincing of my wife, but thank God she trusts me and had faith in us. And so it was a great first full year, and really excited about 25.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk all about it. So can you share your 2024 numbers with people, your first full year in real estate and what you were able to accomplish?
Yeah, so I did 386, 150 in GCI for the year. And so that was 35 closings, just under 12 million in volume. So just over 350,000. So not big houses, not anything like that, just kind of average stuff for DFW. So yeah.
That's great. So your first year, you make over $375,000 in income, where 90% of the industry doesn't make more than $100,000. So the audience is like, well, how in the world did you do that? Right? So let's really start from the top. So I think what's really important is that the understanding that this is in fact a sales business. So I got in the industry just like you did. I came out of a sales industry. So when I got into this, there wasn't this huge like learning curve that I think a lot of people that have never ever been in direct sales have to go through. Talk to us about like how helpful that was getting into this, knowing what sales meant.
Oh, that's huge, because you understand when you're in sales is work. It's not sitting back and waiting for things to come your way. Yes, it's great to get referrals and they're fun because they are easy. But that's not where you make your money. You make your money in the grind, in the daily consistency. And so knowing that going in, plus knowing, I had to replace an income, both of those things kind of on you. It's like, hey, there's no time for failure. There's no reason to fail. It's just time to get after it. And so that's what I did.
Yeah. And so I want you to really just take 1 second, then we'll get into like the nuts and bolts of your real estate business. But I just want you to draw a correlation for people that are newer to the industry to really understand that there's nothing that unique about real estate sales, and that in the dental medical field, you are prospecting every single day too. Like that was it's not, I think a lot of people that get into this business and they hear prospecting and cold calling for the first time and they think it's like this crazy, this is normal. This is called normal sales activities for any sales professional. Would you agree? Like, was it any different from the career you had before?
No, just instead of talking about teeth, we're talking about real estate,
That's it.
which honestly is way more interesting to me than teeth.
Yeah. So I just want to draw that parallel because people think like real estate's unique. I'm like, no. If you're going to make it in sales, I don't care. The vehicle is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Whether you're selling dental medical supplies or financial services or insurance or real estate, it's all the same process when it comes to success fundamentals. And that's what we're going to talk about. So when you go ahead.
One thing too, that's just a little, so on the dental thing, we were actually running clinics. So it wasn't selling supplies. I was face to face with patients, trying to get them to do dentures or, whatever prosthetics they were looking at. So it was definitely more of a face to face. And so having years of experience in that and leading people, it directly translates to what we do here, because sales is sales.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay. So talk to us about, so you get into this business. What did you do to start generating leads and appointments and listings from day one?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did a little bit more unique, I mentioned my business partner, he's also my broker. What we did was we hired some ISAs from the start to start making cold calls. Because I was working full-time in dental, he was working full-time in dental as well. And so I didn't have the ability to sit and make cold calls for hours upon hours a day when I was part-time. And so that was the way we kind of jump started it, was we would have ISAs making calls, and then I would just take my lunch break to follow up on those leads every single day to start building that pipeline. To me, the pipeline is the most important thing. That was one of the things that surprised me a little bit was in the other business, it was a lot more making a decision on the spot, whereas this is definitely more of a long-term pipeline business. And so, what I did starting in April of 23, I started to see results of those things in 24 because of the follow-up and the consistency of talking to those people on a consistent basis. And so that building that pipeline, I think, is key.
Yeah. So unlike most people don't have, they get into the business just dead broke. They have no money, but they got a bunch of time, right? So you were the opposite. You came in the business with money and no time. So you and your business partner says, well, we got money to put into this thing. We know that. And so the question is, why did you select direct outbound prospecting as the vehicle of lead generation versus internet leads or versus open houses? Or why was it that vehicle first? And then we'll break that down.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One, just the fact that it's something you can directly control. And then also being in sales, that's something that everyone else hates. And so the fact that if you can get consistent at that and do it every single day, you're going to get results, because most people make excuses and don't do it. And so why not take those things from those other agents that aren't being consistent and aren't making those calls? So it just seemed like an easy point of entry. Is it easy? No. But is it hard? No, it's really not. It's just committing to do it.
It's just doing it. That's exactly right. So how did you guys set this up with these ISA relationships? In terms of, did you outsource this to a third-party company? Did you hire them in-house? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so we outsource it to a third-party company. We buy the data and then send it to them, and then they make the calls 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. We're up to 6 ISAs at this point that make those calls for us. And again, not every lead that comes through is a high quality lead because they're not perfect. But it does break down some of that barrier to entry, where they are better leads than just picking up a direct cold call from the jump.
Exactly right. I mean, it's the first contact is the thing that most realtors don't want to do. They
Yep.
have no problem calling somebody that has raised their hand to say, "Yeah, I'm thinking about selling my house in this time frame, and sure, I'd be open to that." I mean, every realtors are fine doing that. It's the initial cold call that they just hate so badly. So, what
Mhm.
is the compensation structure for these ISAs with, or what company are you using, by the way?
It's a company out of Egypt.
Okay, cool.
I don't even remember the name of it. We talk to them
Yeah,
pretty regularly. They're super
yeah.
open to coaching. They've been great, but they're out of Egypt.
And so, what do you typically pay one of these full time ISAs?
We're paying with the 6 of them. I think we're paying around 45 to 5 grand a month total.
Yeah, makes total sense. Awesome. And then, what sources of business are you having them focus on? Like, what data sets are you having them call?
Yeah, so we do your typical expired FSBO, FRBO. We do some circle prospecting as well with it. We do downsizers. We really just kind of cycle through different lists. We have a few counties within DFW that we really like to focus on. For instance, I'm in Ellis County, which is on the south side, so that's really where I like to be. My business partner's in Denton County, and then we've got some agents in some other areas that we really want to focus in those areas. So we just kind of cycle through different avenues at different parts of the year.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, this is like one of my favorite business models, and that's why I'm going so deep on this. So, like, what does it look like? I mean, how much of the business comes via the ISAs versus other lead generation channels?
Yeah, about 70% comes from the ISAs, getting about 10% from sphere of influence, and then 20% from some other paid things we do. But really, the ISA is the bread and butter. That's what we love. We enjoy it. I think they're the best leads.
Me too.
It's just it's awesome that it just makes it that much more efficient, I guess I would say, because they're able to make those calls while I'm going on appointments and while I'm doing things, and so it just keeps that cycle going.
Keeps the pipeline filled, right? Every day.
100%.
So walk us through that. Maybe you can break it down. I don't know if you like, how many calls does an ISA make per day? How many contacts do they typically make? And then how many leads are they getting you per day? And then maybe we can just, you know what I'm saying? Like, so
Yeah.
people can wrap their head around this model that we've talked about for years and years and years. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so for us, the agreement that we went in up front, and that was one of the reasons we chose this group, is they have to give us 2 leads per caller per day.
Got it.
So, and we have 6 right now, so we're talking 12 leads a day, and that's what they have to do. And actually, I say 6, we actually just added 2 because we are opening a branch in the Austin, Texas market this year as well. And so we added 2 for there as well. So we're getting 14 or 16 a day between all the ISAs. And, they do a really good job for us. They really do. They take coaching well. As we see things that we need to modify or change, they're on top of it. And, if they don't get that amount of leads per day, they work for free until they do. And so it works really well for both of us.
Yeah. And so I just want to put this in perspective, right? So, like, people listening to this, again, they're going to get really, I'm trying to protect people against shiny object syndrome, right? It's like
Sure.
they're looking for any way to get out of making the calls themselves. So they love this, right? They're just
Yeah.
eating into this right now. So, but I just want to draw a parallel though, that like you either have more time or more money, right? And so it's taking a full-time ISA that's calling how many hours per day?
8 hours per day.
8 hours per day. If you make the calls yourself, I'm talking about all the agents out there, it should take you 2 hours a day to get the same result. So I just want to draw that parallel that, like, wow, this sounds amazing. Dustin's got, well, yes, but this is the difference in skill set. So you got someone calling from Egypt, probably with an accent, not taking anything away from it. It works at scale because of the investment structure, the model. But I just want to draw the parallel that what they produce in 8 hours, that most agents can produce in 2 hours. Would you agree with that?
100%. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't take out the calling from me.
That's right.
All that does is it just narrows things down so that I'm making a different touch call at the point of me making the call, but I'm still doing 2 to 3 hours a day myself.
Yeah.
And so it just changes the relationship a little bit. But if I didn't make the calls, nothing would come of them.
That's right. That's exactly right. So walk us through your process, right? So you're getting 2 per day. You got 6, so that's 12 or 14 per day. Then kind of what does your process of conversion look like? So they're calling all these different lead sources. Do you find that they have more success with, one data set versus another? Do you have them, is it better with circle prospecting than it is with expired? Or is it pretty evenly distributed?
It's pretty even. It really is. I
Good.
don't really see any data that's one versus the other. We are working on training them on Vulcan 7 specifically to work through that.
Yeah.
And so we've been working with Vulcan a little bit on that because we'd like to have a little bit more focus there versus buying data in other ways. But really, their conversion's about the same. But again, really, the conversion comes from those follow-up calls and those second touch calls. And so, really, the way we have it kind of structured with me and my business partner for all of our agents is the calls come in and they're first come, first serve. So it's not like everything's getting funneled to me or everything's getting funneled to my business partner. It's first come, first serve. Whoever touches it first and makes contact with that person, that's their lead. And so
Got
it's
it.
up to them to keep working it. And we use Follow Up Boss and have some different things structured in there to make it easy so things don't get dropped.
Yeah. So ISA talks to Bob, the homeowner. Is the expectation that, okay, he or she generates that opportunity, has that conversation, and then someone from your team is calling the next day, same day? What does that look like?
Same day in most cases. That's the ideal framework. The minute they hit, where I find the most initial success is when I get a text message or a notification and Follow Up Boss that a new lead's been added, and I call them within 10 to 15 minutes. There's a higher likelihood they pick up the phone, I find, and then they don't forget because sometimes we may be the third or fifth person that's called them that day. And then you call them a day or 2 or 3 or 4 days later, and then they've changed their mind. Life's moved on. Something's happened. And so you lose that opportunity versus being on it right then. You just have a much higher opportunity for success.
Yeah, I love it. And are you guys tracking your conversion further down the pipeline in terms of, okay, X amount of leads are coming in. How many are you able to get in touch with? And of those people you're able to get in touch with, what does your appointment set ratio look like from these things?
Yeah, so I don't really track it for the brokerage as much.
Right.
And part of that's just we're still trying to find the right team members to be able to come in and continue to work those leads. Because you mentioned earlier about, trying to get out of those calls. Trust me, people will try to get out of them even though they're not completely cold calls either.
Yeah.
Even though they're a warm lead in there, that we still struggle to get people to make those calls at times. And so, but for me, I set 93 appointments last year that were for listings, met 45 of them. So a little less than 50%. And honestly, my numbers continue to improve. I didn't pull, comparison, but end of the year, my numbers set to met were much better. A lot of that honestly is from things we learned about disqualifying. In the very beginning, I was going on every appointment I could get. It didn't matter. They said, yes, let's go. And then of those 45 appointments, took 23 listings. And so that's kind of what the breakdown looked like for me.
Yeah. Do you know how many leads that was out of because that's the key. That's why this model is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Because in order to get that, if you were doing the initial call, right? So 93 appointments, if we just go through it, would require you to have generated 465 leads yourself. And
Yeah.
it would have required that to be almost 4,800 conversations to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
any idea, did you get, I guess, if I was looking at this, right, did you get less or more than 465 leads?
I would say more. It definitely more than that amount of leads because there is definitely some weeding through the quality of leads because they're not going to disqualify the same way I would if I was doing that same initial first call.
Totally.
So there is some junk in there. But for the most part, it's providing that opportunity where when I pick up the phone and I call, instead of saying, hey, before you hang up, I'm a realtor and having to go through that, I'm saying, hey, you spoke to my assistant and you said you were interested in selling your property. And so I was calling to see, tell me a little bit about that and what can we do to see if it makes sense for us to work together.
I love it. So maybe we'll do this off air, but like the real reason why this model works so well is that somewhere maybe it's 900 leads you got. I don't know. We'd have to really look at that. But the real thing here is that you probably didn't have anywhere close to 4,800 conversations to get 93 appointments. That's the real key. You and I'd love to figure that out, Dustin, with you maybe after the show, because that's why this thing works so well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's pick up from appointment set to met, right? Because now it's irrelevant how the lead was generated from this part of the funnel, right? Mm-hmm. This will pertain to anybody. It doesn't matter if you're getting all your business from past clients, centers of influence, open house, cold call, doesn't matter. So you set an appointment. Walk us through what you're doing next from the time you set it to the time you meet with it. What happens?
Yeah. So first thing is the dollar scratch off with a handwritten card. Same thing. I try to find ways to be as efficient as possible. So we bought a handwriting robot to write the letters so that I don't have to. And so have the robot write letters and I make them at the beginning of every week. So I've got, 15, 20 of them, stick a card in it. And honestly, that's the most golden thing ever. Every time I meet with someone, they bring it up. It's sitting on the kitchen counter. They even save the magnets. I see the magnets. And I think the only reason they save them is because of the lottery ticket. Without that, it would probably go in the trash with everything else. And so sending that, and then I'm making a follow-up call the day of the appointment to confirm, as well as a follow-up text, just to make sure that, I'm not going to drive, because sometimes in the Metroplex could very well be over an hour drive. And so the last thing I want to do is make that drive and then not be there or forget or, have some other excuse. And a lot of that comes from disqualifying up front as well.
Yeah, on the call itself, as you're maybe looking to set appointments, maybe you say, well, I'm not going to set this because of, one reason or the other. Are 100%. You doing any type of selling the appointment? What I mean by that is there any type of pre-listing packet that either gets delivered to the homeowner's property or emailed to the property owner prior to the appointment?
Just my resume. So I do send the resume as well when I send the postcard. That's how I close the call generally is, hey, you're going to see my resume in your inbox within the next 10 to 15 minutes. If you have any questions about that before we meet, feel free to reach back out. Look forward to meeting you on XYZ date and time.
Love it. I love it. All right. So before we talk about the appointment and what you're doing to win the actual client, if you will, what for the audience sake, if I'm in the audience, one of the questions I would have, and we're going to open this up for Q&A, you guys, in about 10, 15 minutes, is how long did it take you to get your first listing from having these ISAs, make these calls, and then put them in the pipeline, follow up with the pipeline, go on the appointments, did it happen like in the first week? Or did it take some time for you to actually get the first listing?
I would have to go back and actually look, but my best educated guess would probably be between 90 and 120 days.
Yeah,
it's definitely a long-term process. That was honestly the biggest, I may have mentioned this earlier, but the biggest surprise to me about this business, and looking back, shouldn't have been a surprise, but it's just how long the sales cycle actually is. Because I'm just so used to, hey, I'm going to get in front of this person, I'm going to sell them right now. And this isn't that business. And so now once you get in front of them and you can sell them on the listing and things like that, but it's still a much longer process to get to that point.
No doubt. And I'm so happy that we talked about that. And I almost forgot to ask you. So that's why I went back to it. I looked at my notes and said, oh, crap, because it's the 90-day rule. I came out of the mortgage business and it was the same way. Like if I'm talking to a prospect about a refinance, it was like one call close. It was a one call close from pulling their credit to like writing the application to getting their deposit to ordering the appraisal was a one call close, and then getting in this business, it's like, 3, 4, 6 months to convert one client. That's the part that I think most agents just really, really struggle with. And so before we get into the appointment, we have to talk about the importance of follow-up. You know what I mean? Of like, man, we have these initial conversations. even in your sales process, there's a lot of follow up. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so tons of follow up, and there's so many times where I think agents drop the ball in the follow up and they lose an opportunity. And so we've fine tuned and edited our follow up boss to make it work so that we don't lose things, to eliminate the likelihood of missing things. And so hot leads I'm touching at least once a week. Warm leads are once every 10 to 14 days. And then cold leads are every 2 weeks. And so just making sure we're keeping top of mind. Now, if a cold lead tells me, hey, I'm not interested for 6 months, but they do actually have, after going through some disqualifying questions, they are going to be interested in 6 months. I'm not going to wait 6 months to reach out to them. I'm going to get their permission. Hey, are you cool if I follow up with you in 3? Because the last thing I want to do is assume 6 months, someone hit them at the right time, and then I lose my opportunity to earn their business.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And so your follow up process, just knowing you, is that would you agree that the vast majority of the success you get out of lead follow up is from voice to voice conversations over this thing?
Yes.
So what I mean by that is everybody wants to automate follow up, which is why their follow up sucks.
Yeah.
They want to avoid they want to just avoid the phone. They don't want to be on the phone. They want to avoid that. But it's the voice to voice conversation that makes up 80 to 90% of a lead follow up campaign, as to is it going to be successful or not. Would you agree with that, or do you see that differently?
No, 100%. And so much so that we built out a texting system in Follow Up Boss to try to automate some of those things. And it helps keep you top of mind to an extent, but it comes from a different phone number than my phone number. It's a little bit different process, and no, it doesn't work. All it does is help you stay top of mind and provide some sort of touch point. But the touch point where you earn business is 100% over the phone and then face to face.
Absolutely. I mean, I went to crazy amounts of extent, like with this over my career, to prove that. Like, I'm talking about insane things. I'm not suggesting you guys do any of these things. I'm nervous to even bring them up because everyone's going to get really shiny. But now that I said that, they're going to be like, oh, tell us. Like, I went to so Mailbox Power is a company that most of you guys are using. I went to the extent of like customizing every single one of those mailers to like having different photos of their house on the mailer, on every single different mailer. I went to the extent of having college kids do a visit, an in-person visit every 2 weeks with a letter, hand deliver a letter from me on my behalf every 2 weeks for nurtures, having a human being show up there every 14 days. And none of it took the place of me having a voice-to-voice conversation. So if you think, all right, how do I just automate follow-up and then magically appointments just start showing up on your calendar? Just forget it. You're wasting your time, your energy, your effort, and your money. And so I'm not happy or sad. It's just it's good to hear you speak that. Listen, if you're gonna, it's one thing to generate all these leads. People think leads are the problem. Leads are not the problem. It's not an issue. Leads are not your issue. It's going to be, can you convert those leads into an appointment is the big issue. You agree?
100%. Yeah. Leads are there. And I'm definitely more of an abundance mindset type of person. I don't view me competing against other people in DFW or anything. There are plenty, even with the market slowing down, there's plenty of opportunity for everybody if you go get it.
Yeah. All right. So let's transition to the appointment. All right. So this, lead follow-up and the appointment, your ability to present will determine whether you make it in this business or not. I mean, that's the truth, right? So talk to us about the importance of creating a compelling presentation, and talk to us about your approach to your listing appointment and what you're doing to actually win the client.
Yeah, so this is honestly where I have to give you and your program a ton of credit, because prior to, I had no idea what I was doing. When I would go into listing appointments, I would sometimes bring something, I sometimes wouldn't, other than just data, because I didn't even know what to present. And so going through this process and having the listing presentation, I mean, I've got my little binders over here that are bound and everything, and going in face to face with that's very professional and very looks good. But honestly, I think the biggest key that I've found success with way the appointment setup happens when we first meet face to face, giving them permission to tell me no at the end, and giving them permission to be completely transparent and honest, while also them giving me that same presentation. And so I can't tell you how many times I've met with people where they've already met with 2 or 3 agents. And I go in, and because I tell them the truth about what their property's worth to get it sold, that may be 15 or 20 or 30,000 less than what someone else told them, because we were brutally honest from the get-go, they chose me over someone else because of that transparency, because there was more trust there.
I love it. And the reason why it worked is because you set it up you got their permission to do so. Because if you don't get permission and you go in with a price $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 less than the other guy, likely you're going to lose, actually. But because you set it up in a way where you open up the mind and the eyes of the prospect to say, wow, you're the only agent, Dustin, that I've met with who actually talks about this raw transparency and this truth, and the fact that other agents don't, it allows them to see that he's just telling me the truth as to what it's going to take to get this thing sold, rather than just trying to sell me. Would you agree?
100%. And I had that same exact situation last week on an appointment where the person that is selling the house is really smart. They've done their own research, definitely in the ballpark. But every other agent that was coming in was telling them they could list their house between 312 and 325. There's not a house that's sold in their neighborhood above $305,000. So why in the world do you think he could get 312 for his? Versus I came in and said, hey, 300K, that's what it is. That's your sell price. That's it. And he goes, you're the first person to actually tell me that. But that's what I thought all along, somewhere 300 at the top. And I'm like, that's what it is. That's what the data says. That's what the market says. It's very easy to see that. And so I got the listing just because other people weren't transparent. But it's not going in from the beginning of the conversation and saying, hey, I'm going to list your house at 300,000. It's going through that listing presentation of why you're coming to that conclusion. And so building that and having that transparency and that permission up front as you go through it, it's really easy to tell them $30,000 left at the end, because you know it's data backed and you have the information to prove it.
Yeah. And so this will help everybody in the community, especially those that are in the inner circle. And that is when it comes to the listing presentation, we talk about you have to actually show up and provide real tangible value, right? And it's like, well, what does that actually mean? And most agents that have no substance to their presentation, they die on this hill of like marketing, right? And so I want you to speak to the how you were able to learn this listing presentation that I've taught you that has like so many, it is very intense, because when I train and coach an agent, I want their presentation to be filled with value, filled with substance, not BS, not fluff, not marketing fluff. So my question is, how did you go about learning this presentation? Because there's a lot to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So the coaching calls, a lot of them with Dom, right? Going through and just line after line after line, repeating and learning. And then the great part is once you learn the script verbatim, it's really easy to start making it your own. And so I could put Dustin's personality in Brandon's script because I knew it by heart. I didn't have to think when I'm going through the presentation. It was just something that, on this page, I'm going to talk about XXXXX. And so just going through it, and what I was doing in the very early stages, back when I first joined in March, every time I was driving to a listing appointment, because most of the time it's 45 minutes to an hour, I'm driving to a listing appointment and I'm listening to past calls, or I'm listening to your video going through the presentation, and I'm trying to say it with you as you're reading it, so that I can make sure when I get there, hey, I may not, in March, I may not have the full presentation yet, but I'm going to nail the first page.
So smart.
And I'm going to nail page 1 and page 2, and then I'm going to nail page 2 and 3. And so just continuing to build upon that until I had it down.
So I hope everyone heard that, right? So because that's my last question before we open this up for Q&A, is like, what advice would you have to agents that are brand new to the inner circle? So they just joined coaching. They're excited. They come with, all types of emotions. Like, what advice would you give them so that they can succeed, not just in the program, but like really fast track their success in their career?
Sure. Learn the scripts. Very, very important, because even if you don't know the business and you're new as an agent, you're going to sound way more professional and way more put together when you're meeting with that client. And do the work. Make the calls. Is it fun? No. I've been doing it for years, and still, is it enjoyable? No, but kind of. You learn to kind of make it enjoyable. And I tell people all the time that are new agents that I talk to is, yes, you may get an FU on the phone when you make that cold call, but that's just one step closer to what you're actually looking for. So move on, not a big deal, and get to the next one, because you're that much closer to a win, because it's just a numbers game. That's all it is.
Yeah, you don't have to love prospecting. You just have to love what it affords you to accomplish. It's the same thing with working out. You don't have to fall in love with the workout, but my, oh my, you're going to fall in love with feeling healthy, looking great, and feeling great. That's what we're talking about, right? So if you want a big life, you want a big income, get over it. You're going to have to do a lot of things that you don't like to do. And I think that's a huge issue in our industry. It's like, well, I don't like doing that. Okay, well, how much do you like being broke? Anyway, don't get me going on that. I'll get lost on that. All right. So,
Sure.
What questions do you guys have for Dustin? So he just spent the last 40 minutes pretty much breaking down his entire business. As they're starting to ask questions, is there any part of your business that I didn't ask about that you think would be really helpful to share with the community?
No, it's a lot of what I'm doing are the things that you teach. And it's the reason I chose to, because I was looking at a ton of different options, and my business partner is actually who introduced me to you via text, sending me some videos, and it resonates really well with us, because it's the way I've always sold to begin with. Is I'm not going in looking for the yes. I'm not going in to make you think you're getting sold. We're just having conversations. We're figuring out if it makes sense. And so it's just the way I've always kind of worked things. But learning this business, getting involved in coaching at an early stage, I think vastly expedited my success because I was able to learn quickly versus having to learn by trial and error.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I love it. All right, Candace, let's go to you first, my friend. Let's get you unmuted and you can ask Dustin. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Glad to meet you.
You too.
I am also a dual career agent. At least I have been for 22 years. So I got my license when I was in college.
Oh, wow.
I've been doing well. I'm able to sell kind of like you part-time. I was able to knock it out of the park. I let my husband's anti-risk lifestyle to dictate me not leaving my full-time job. But now I'm actually, what? I have to live life on my terms. Maybe it's my whole midlife crisis now that I'm 40, right? So I was like, you know what? I can't keep living the way he wants me to. We have 2 children. So one of the questions that I do have for you is for your ISAs. And I know, Brandon, don't kill me, because I know you want to.
It's all good, girl. It's all good. Ask away.
I will make the calls. But I was curious, for your ISAs, did you provide the scripts to them? Or did they, because I know some ISA companies, that's their niche. And so sometimes they're already trained. So I just wanted to know a little bit about that background.
Yeah. So when I would say if you've proven yourself, and obviously you have, that you can do this, pull the ripcord, do it. Because the time that you're putting in now and you're having success, if you just just imagine if you only were able to double that time, and you should be able to do that easily full time. If you just double it, you're going to more than double your output. Because I don't think that output is directly line by line in this business. I think as you do your output or your input, your output's going to grow at a faster rate. Just because of the building the pipeline and the funnel over time. And so I would say pull the ripcord and do it. But on the ISA front, it is a company that specifically does real estate ISA. So we started with just using their scripts, And then over time, we started to send scripts, make modifications, make changes, because we have the same people working our leads every day. And so that's the big thing. If you go with an ISA company, most of them, they're just going to cycle through different people at different times. So it's really hard to dial in. But as we grew with them and continued to add, that was one of our criteria is we want to have the same people all the time so that we can really train them and mold them for what we're looking for to eliminate some of the junk.
Yeah, and because the questions are like, how much time are you guys having to spend training these ISAs versus the company doing the heavy lifting of the training of the ISAs?
Yeah, and the majority of it is definitely the company. We have a contact there that runs everything. And so we probably spend an hour, maybe 2 hours max a month having conversations with them, tweaking things. Now, in the beginning, it may have been just a little bit more, but not much. They did a really good job from the start, and then again took coaching well. So
it's great. It's great. Go ahead, John. We'll get you unmuted.
Yeah, I might have missed it. I came a little bit late, but after joining the program, how soon did you start going the ISA route?
So we were doing the ISA route actually prior to joining the program. So we were doing that when I was still working in the corporate world, just because again I only had so much time, and so that was from the beginning. And so a little bit different than probably what it is for most people. Had I started in the business full time where I wasn't working a corporate job, we probably wouldn't have done the ISA thing from the front. I would have just been making calls. But it just a little bit different trajectory, and so went that way first.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just tell you, John, I mean, you guys have heard me say this for years and years, or maybe you haven't, I don't know. But like when we talk about where to leverage dollars, because again, there's the battle between what do you have more of, more time or more money? What happens is as you start to make more money in this business, the other resource, time, gets depleted, right? You guys all know that. So the question is often, okay, where are we going to invest those dollars to buy back some time? And so I've always recommended that you go admin first, but then the very next dollar into leveraging lead generation should be into the ISA. So if you're going to put money into lead generation to fast track, to fill the pipeline, I've tested everything, John, and the ISA route is by far the greatest return, more so than Zillow, Realtor.com, PPC, Google PPC, Facebook PPC, Boomtown, Commissions Inc., et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because you have somebody having voice-to-voice conversations with your ideal client avatar in the area you want to serve.
Makes sense.
So
Awesome.
if you get to the point where you've got money, it's like, okay, I've got money to put back into the business, where would the best place to be? It'd be into a human calling homeowners to look for listing opportunities on your behalf. Cool?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Jessica, go ahead.
Okay, so friend advice about pulling that plug. I have it on the calendar to pull the plug in March because I figured I'll learn prospect, learn. In March, I'll just go for it. But I'm finding that I'm learning more by fucking up a lot on the phone. Pardon my French. So I guess phoning a friend, I have the communication skills without the cussing involved, and I love learning. And I see myself doing very successful if I just give myself some 2 weeks. Do you think that, and I'm sorry, my day job is like 4 hours on the computer from like 9 to 12 prime hours. So I'm trying to do the new expireds, try to plug in classes and work. And now I'm kind of leaning towards just prospecting from like 4 to 7 because I've heard that that's pickup time. Do you suggest I do that afloat for a few months, or do I just pull the trigger and prospect every single hour I can? Like, seriously, I need somebody to tell me what to do.
Well, at the end of the day, I would say do what you can do. And so if you have the ability to prospect outside of just 4 to 7, do it, especially if your goal is to pull the ripcord and do something.
Yeah.
Why wait? Why make a plan to delay what you're trying to do?
Because there's these like butterflies in my tummy
doing.
telling me not to. I'm scared.
Well, I get it. And it's scary. But if your plan is to do it, I would be doing everything within your power to get to your goal.
I know.
Let me jump in. You see, the reason why people are scared, and I've thought about this for 20 years, this is going to help you so much. This will help everybody. Is the problem, the reason why you are scared to leave that thing is because not just you, Jessica, is the fear of not showing up for yourself the way you show up for your employer. In other words, you see, when you show up for your employer for X amount of time, you get a paycheck. Well, the problem is when people leave that type of environment, that type of an accountability, and they go work for themselves as realtors, they don't work the same. And so they can't make sense of it because they feel like they're losing the paycheck, because when they work for themselves, they don't work as hard as they do for the employer that they say they want to leave. However, when they do, the time that they spend working for themselves, this is what Dustin's saying, is worth astronomically more money. So the question is not about leave or stay. The question is, will Jessica show up for herself the same way she shows up for this employer who's giving her a paycheck on Friday? If the answer is
better.
well, so everybody says that, right? Everybody says that. And if it's true, the only thing you will regret is not doing it sooner.
100%.
I will tell you that most don't. Everybody says they will, right until time to show up and actually make the calls and prospect. Most don't. And so therefore they are put in a position to go back and get a job. Because we know why. All the social psychologists have proved why we are much more motivated by the fear of loss than we are at the opportunity of gain. In other words, more people will show up for a $50,000 salary and work their asses off more so than they would at the opportunity to earn $500,000 a year for themselves. They won't do it. They won't work the same. And so if you do in real estate, it will pay you more than any job you could ever get. It's the highest paid career for people that do the work and the lowest paid career for people that don't do the work. You'd be way better off working at Home Depot.
Okay. Quitting tomorrow.
You should.
Thank you. I know.
If you are the type of person who does the work, there's nothing that's going to pay you more than real estate. The problem is, again, just you guys know me. There's no BS. My job as your coach is to tell you the truth. You have to deal with the emotions of the truth. Is that most people aren't doing the work. And so it's like, I can't quit this job. I know myself. I am not going to prospect for 6 hours a day. There's no fucking way I'm going to do that. So I have to keep the job. So they don't trust themselves enough to be self-employed. Dustin, you agree with that?
100%. And a really good example, you guys can kind of see my background. This is an 8x7 office that I built in my backyard. The reason I had to do it is one of the things I learned really quickly is I have an office in my house. It was not an office. It was so easy to get distracted. It was so easy to want to go hold my now 2-year-old baby or my 12-year-old son when he's out of school, or, it was so easy to go do other things. And so I had to make the decision, okay, am I going to go rent something so that I can get out of the house? Am I going to just go sit in a parking lot in my car like I was doing when I was part-time? Or am I going to make something happen? Because I saw within the first week that being inside of my house, even though it was an office and it wasn't my wife coming, it was just easy for me to want to get distracted and find other things to do with my time. So I had to build something out here so I get out of the house and get to work. So this is workspace. It's what I do here.
Yeah. And I would tell you and everybody else, it's like if you prospect from 8 until noon, it's 4 hours a day, every single day for 6 months, there will be no job where you can make as much money. None, period. It will be impossible for you not to make unbelievable money in this business. The only question is, will you do it? You can. The only question is, will you? And everybody that does do that always comes out the other side with a lot of money. And the whole time, it's not easy. You're going to want to quit every day, right? Xavier was just on the show last week, and he talked about quitting his 4th month in. And on his 5th month, he took 7 listings, made $100,000. Had he quit, it would have been 0. So in 30 days' time, to everybody else, he looks like an overnight success, but it took 5 months of crawling through the shit to get to that outcome. Dustin just said the same thing. It was 3-4 months of 0, of nothing, of no results whatsoever. When he's used to making $30,000, $40,000 a month, most people quit. And so it just takes that time. All right, John, go ahead.
Okay. Dustin, 2 questions. One, you said your ISAs call 8 hours a day. who are they calling? I know it's fresh expires, but what does their kind of day look like? And the second one is when you started this, were you doing open houses or did you have somebody else do your open?
No, I've done one open house as an agent. I tell people up front when I have the conversation is, I understand that 20 years ago, I think it did make a difference in the business. But everything, all the data, everybody I've talked to, and my own, what I've seen, it doesn't make a difference. The only thing that I may do is pick up a buyer, someone that's looking to buy. And so it's a waste of both of our time. So I would rather focus both of our times, effort, and energy on things that matter and move the needle versus just wasting our time. And so I did one, and the only reason I did it is because there were 3 other houses within the same neighborhood that were having one on that particular day. And I actually had someone else on our team actually go do it. I didn't even do it. So they did it. They were working with a lot of buyers, so they were looking for buyers. And so it was a win for both of us. Did we get anything from it? Absolutely not. Was it a waste of time? Yes. The ISAs, remind me of your question on, what does their day look like? So they're 8 hours a day calling from a dialer. It's a 3-line dialer, and the data, again, we buy different data all the time from different sources like PropStream, for instance, things like that. And so it could be downsizers, it could be high equity, it could be, a bunch of different things. And then obviously the expired FSBO, FRBO, things like that as well. And so it's a mixed bag of data. But one of the things, again, that we plan to do as a brokerage in 25 is to really start having more focus with 2 ISAs to start, specifically working Vulcan 7 every day.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I totally agree with Dustin. Open houses is an opportunity to leverage your listing to get more business. It's not a way to sell the house. That's the truth. That's the reality. All right. One last question. You guys got one last opportunity. Anything for Dustin? Going once, going twice. Sold. All right. So Dustin, we appreciate you doing this, my friend. This is great.
Of course.
What is the goal for 2025 for you personally?
875 GCI.
875. I love it. That's amazing. And then, so you guys are growing the company. Really, what areas in Texas are you guys looking to grow?
North Texas. So all the DFW Metroplex. And then we are starting in Austin. And the great thing about Austin, the reason we decided to do that at this point is because we have 2 other former regional directors with our dental company that are making the change as well. And they're already down there. And so we trust them, we know them. And so we're kicking that off this year as well. So right now, Austin and then North Texas.
Yeah, that's great. And so if an agent hears this replay on YouTube and he says, wow, I'd love to talk to you about teaming up, how do they get a hold of you?
You can email me directly, dustin@dustincrosby.com. Or I'll put out my phone number too.
Well, why don't I do this? I'll put your email and your contact number just in the notes of this video, just in the description right underneath this video. So if anybody wants to talk to Dustin about his team and what they're doing, you guys can reach out. I'll put his number and his email in the show notes beneath this video. So, dude, really appreciate the time. Truly, this helps out the community a lot. And maybe we'll do this a year from now and see even a higher trajectory. 875 is a great number. I love it. And you're in the market to do it. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.